Hello and welcome to our recap of Dark Side of the Ring, Season 5. I am DOZ101. With me is Gaz and Zamario, and we're here to give you guys a season retrospective of Dark Side of the Ring. We're going to give you guys, a short recap of all the episodes, what we think overall of the season. And I'm going to start with Zam. Zam, what did you think of this season overall for the Dark Side of the
Um,
Ring?
it had interesting documentary style episodes in
Yep.
this season, and they were well displayed. But the truly sort of macabre nature of what Darkseid, in my opinion, is supposed to be, wasn't really there this season. I think they're kind of running out of people to talk about,
Mm-hmm.
or they have to wait for a few people they can talk about who are not ready to talk about yet. See, you're letting them season, so to speak, like Vince McMahon, like Hulk Hogan, like Alberto Del Rio.
Yep.
But even though all presented well, good stories. Otherwise, some of them were there were a couple of really outstanding stories in this season, but it was just okay
Yep.
at best.
Okay. Gaz, what did you think of the season overall?
I agree with what Sam just said. I think there was some really good look backs at really famous wrestlers who had a bit of they had the ascendancy to the top, and then they had the drop when unfortunately alcohol or drugs took hold. I mean, I thought there was like 3 or 4 really good proper dark side episodes. I disagree with what Sam said. I do think there are people out there who are dark side worthy, and I'm going to get into those in a minute, but overall, a bit disappointed compared to how good some of the other series have been.
Yep. All right, we're going to start with Earthquake, and this is the only one that I missed. So you guys will be covering this episode, and then I can pick you up like when we start with Buff Bagwell and so forth. So, Zam, if you want to take this one, what do you think about the Earthquake episode?
It was about a nice guy who died way too young. I mean, for a start, Earthquake looked like he was in his 40s when he was in his 20s. When
Mm-hmm.
he joined the WWE, he was like 27 years old. When he was like fighting Hulk Hogan, you wouldn't have thought that. You would have thought he was 47.
Mm-hmm.
But backstage, John Tenta, aka Earthquake, seemed to be a very nice guy. Everyone liked him. He liked his family. He spoke Japanese. He was a sumo wrestler for a little while as well. It was some really fascinating takes. He was good friends with the character of Tugboat, also known as Typhoon. They did do the Shockmaster skit as well. They explained that, which was
That
really
part I did
good.
see with Haku. With Haku, if
Yeah.
you haven't seen it,
Oh
it's
god,
it's
yeah.
the best wrestling thing you'll see all year.
Watching Haku cry with laughter
Yep.
was one of the best things ever. In a way, it kind of destroyed his career. And there was a time when he came back within the WWE during the Attitude Era. He was wearing a mask. Everyone knew who he was, but he wasn't able to be who he was. And he always had these unfortunately stupid gimmicks near the latter end of his career, which were earthquake related, like Avalanche and Shark and all this sort of stuff, until he just wanted to become John Tenta. Loved by his family, loved by his kids, loved by his wife. Died very young, unfortunately. He just seemed to be a very popular man amongst his peers. Nobody had a bad word to say about him, and it's a shame that he's no longer with us.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, John Tenta. Unfortunately, it didn't feel dark sidey enough, because he's a good guy. He just
Yeah.
died young. He wasn't an alcoholic. He didn't do drugs or any of that stuff. He just
Yeah.
had like some bad booking, and his career didn't necessarily catapult him to levels where he could have been. He was catapulted quite early, but the only dark side thing about it was that he died young, and even that was just natural causes. It's just a shame, really. Yeah.
Okay. Gaz, any thoughts?
Um, I agree with what Sam said. I mean, this guy was a really nice guy. The only thing that I think could have been dark side about him is the legit shoot fight he had against that Kota Kiyoshi person. If they'd built the whole dark side
Yeah.
episode around that could have been more interesting. Like what built up to it, because there's a lot of interesting backstory. If you've not seen it, I think it's either Wrestling Bios or it's like the Extreme Dark Side of Wrestling on YouTube. Both have gone into a lot of details of what happened and stuff like that. If they did something like that and talked about what happened, people around that, maybe talk to some people on the Japanese side, that would have been more dark side ring because that could have gone really badly, really quickly. I mean, the fact that it was what it was, and literally like John Tenter was literally like that. The TIE fighter, like he was going to put this guy in the eye and stuff like that. Like
it became a shoot, didn't it? Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
It
That's dark side worthy, but they didn't focus on that, which is what they should have done in my opinion.
I don't think they could have stretched that for 45 minutes, but
they could.
I mean, but the thing is that at the end of the day, John Tenter, Earthquake, he came out looking good because he was protecting the business. This other guy was trying to sabotage the business, and because of that, people appreciated Earthquake. He came out looking like the good guy.
Yeah,
out of all of that. So
okay, yeah. And that's the John Tenta Earthquake episode. May John Tenta rest in peace. Okay, and then Buff and the Bagwells. And the one thing that I'm going to say about this episode, did we really need to hear and see about his mother shaving his genitalia area? I would have taken that out of the episode, all right? We didn't need to know that. We did not need to know that. We did not need to know this. That was gross. Never do that again. No.
It's just how it was it was played out like
yeah.
There he is, his mum is shaving, he's got his scrotum pulled back behind his ass and she's shaving it that way, and then one of his friends sees him, he goes, "Hey, how you doing?" like that, and his mum is shaving his fucking ass.
Yeah, that we could have done without that, but the thing that I thought that was the most interesting about this episode was the calf implants that he had, that when he got his calves implanted. Yep. And then he couldn't walk or whatever it was, and it got so bad to where he started to clot. And if he couldn't get that corrected, he would have died. I'm like, dude, there's only so much you could do to your body before your body says enough. And it's clear that Buff did drugs and he did steroids and he made a mess of his life. And now, thankfully, I think he's turning his life around. Thanks to thanks to Diamond Dallas Page. But I thought overall this was just an all right episode. I mean, it had some dark moments, but it didn't feel like it was like one of those like, whoa, okay, this has gotten really dark. But it was an all right episode.
Well, I thought.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I thought the moment which was kind of bizarre was like they were playing poker, and then all of a sudden his dad just gets up from the table. I think he loses the game.
Yeah.
And then he takes his shotgun and he starts shooting the shit out, killing all the chicken in their farm. And then later on, his dad and his mum are having an argument, and he pulls out a gun and just empties an entire round in his dad, but doesn't kill him. And at the same time, his dad forgives him. And later on, as they get older, because they were brought up with quite wealthy family, dad owned a lumber yard. Limber, is that how you say it?
Lumber.
Timber yard. Lumber, yeah. I'm thinking timber and limber. Yeah. And he would give his kids drugs. He have some cocaine and stuff like that. Like those were some of the weird dark side-ish moments for the episode. But overall, no different to a lot of guys. Obviously he did gigoloing and all of that, but still it was kind of amusing at times. I hate to say it.
It was weird. It was one of those where it was like, I don't know whether I could laugh or cry at this.
Well, I laugh at it because you look at him now. You can see in his face that he's got his shit together. Some people look haggard. He looked fresh. He was off the drugs. He that part of his life was behind him. He's not young anymore, and you can see that. Okay, fine. He's rebuilt his life, and for that reason, it ended on a happy note, which I prefer, regardless of the part. It's not always about the journey. So it is about the journey because you hope at the end of the journey, these guys have sorted their shit out, like Jake the Snake Roberts. But it's a journey, and that's a dark side-ish journey. It dark side elements to it. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. That's all right. I would say that this was, I agree with what you said, that this is really a dark side episode, but I did enjoy me and Paddy going on about how much we do Buff Bagwell and him and Too Cold. They were the shit back in the day. But I do agree with you. But saying that though, I did enjoy seeing yet another story of DDP helping somebody out. Like him and Scott Norton now. I mean, because say what you want about it's not Scott Riggs, sorry. Him and Scott Riggs out and getting both their lives back in order. It's just great to see that. Both of them telling they're they're really down on their luck, and DDP both helped them both, and I really like that. So so for that, it was worth it. So
Okay, and then up next, arguably the saddest episode of the entire season, Terry Gordy, the final flight of the Freebird. Gaz, I'm going to let you take this one since Zam and I have taken one, so we'll start with your thoughts.
This one, as you said, was a sad. I wouldn't call it dark side anymore. This was more like the sad ring. You know, like this guy that like was the big monster of the famous Freebird.
Trio.
Yeah, the Freebird trio.
Yep.
And it's just sad to see that that's how his career ended. Was like this guy just like got his moment, and then all of a sudden he just went away from him. It's just like this guy should have been much better, much bigger star than he was, because of how good he was and how big he was and how charismatic he was. It's just all those things. It's just like it's really sad. And as I said, as much that's the reason I really like this episode, because it got me to give an insight of a really sad story.
Yeah, I think with Terry Gordy, he's one of those dudes that was ahead of his time with the way he could work. And, I would always hope that one day he would make it in the WWF, but by the time he got there, he was not the same Terry Gordy anymore. He was just there. And when you got a guy like The Undertaker telling you, hey, man, this isn't going to work, then you knew it just wasn't going to work. And it was only a matter of time. But it's a shame what drugs and things like that can do to people. And I wish Terry would have gotten his stuff together a lot sooner. But I miss him. I miss Terry Gordy to this day. It just sucks that he's not around with us anymore. But I thought it was a really good episode, despite it being just so sad. It was so heartbreaking. Zam?
Sometimes Dark Side of the Ring episodes don't have to be about people getting into organized crime and stuff. It could be a tragedy, and that can make it dark side. And in a way, I think we might have overlooked this one because this is a tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when you see, there's like two sides to this guy. You saw him prior to the overdose and then after the overdose, which robbed him of his mind.
Yeah.
Because when you see him in shoot interviews and you see those eyes and you can see, whoa, where is the old Terry Gordy? He's not there anymore. And he's almost become like, I say this with the utmost respect, like Forrest Gump-esque. He's almost like a different person. He can still take the bumps or whatever, but in there, he's just not Terry Gordy anymore. That man's gone. It's a different man with the same name, with the same looks and everything. And that was one of the sad things that came from this, that, his mind was robbed, and that was very tragic, when you become a whole different persona because of what the life it has given you, and that's what happened to him. He wasn't the same guy anymore. It's very sad. It's very sad.
It's very, very sad. All right, and then I'm going to let Zam take this next one, Saving Face, the Brutus Beefcake story. He will start with his thoughts.
This was an interesting story. I was looking forward to this one. Brutus Beefcake, without a doubt, the barber was his best gimmick ever. He had multiple gimmicks. Unfortunately, he couldn't take the barber with him when he changed territories. Very lucky to have a very good friend like Hulk Hogan, who unfortunately isn't his friend anymore. He comes across as a very endearing guy. It's unfortunate with the accident that happened to that we all knew that happened to him, that took him off our screens for a long time, and in a way hindered his career considerably. Should have killed him, to tell you the truth. His comeback with the barbershop was great. Obviously, famously, Marty Jannetty, Shawn Michaels, as we all know.
Yep.
There was it was an interesting biopic, so to speak. And he got what he deserved with his Hall of Fame inductee, because even though he was inducted as Brutus the Barber Beefcake, sometimes your induction is not just about that gimmick; it's about your entire story.
Yeah.
Eventually Dustin Rhodes, he's going to get inducted. He won't be just Goldust. It'll be about natural.
Yeah, it'll be his entire journey.
Yeah, his entire journey. When wrestlers get inducted. So that's the same with Beefcake. Whether he and Hogan will ever be friends again, I don't know. But regardless, it was an interesting story, nevertheless.
Yeah, I thought it was a very interesting story. I mean, that parasailing accident, I think it was the one time that every company wished him well. Like, that's how revered that Brutus the Barber Beefcake was, that like all companies reached out and we were like, we want to give our well wishes to him. And it's sad that he and Hogan had that falling out. I don't know who was at fault for that, but I hope that they make up one day. I can hope they make up, but with Hogan's ego, I doubt it. But yeah, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, he deserved to be in the Hall of Fame. Didn't really care for the barber gimmick, but it did lead to arguably the greatest heel turn of the early 90s with Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. When Marty Jannetty did not get thrown through the window, he tried to dive through the window to escape. So,
Yeah, fair enough.
all right, Gaz, your thoughts?
I agree with what you two just said. It was a really it was kind of sad what happened to him, with the whole accident and stuff like that. That he had to have his face reconstructed, um, but yeah, like the stupid gimmicks he got given in WCW after it was just really bad. But I actually love the barber gimmick, the big scissors, the flaming cut hair, stuff like that. It kind of like worked for the over the top era, and I think the reason that he fell out was because I think people finally got to Hogan and said, this guy's a bit of a hanger on, which I don't think he was. It just that they were just very close friends. It's just one of those things where you get
They
your
were
friends
childhood
shots.
friends. Like, yeah, they've known each other since they were kids. It's just so weird, like for them, like when people say that, it shows you how jealous they are. Because if you've been friends with somebody for a long time before you even got into the industry, they were like musicians and stuff like that before you got
Yep.
into the industry, and then people are giving you shit like, this guy's my friend. I've known him longer than all you motherfuckers.
Yep.
Like it's ridiculous. So yeah.
Yep. All right. And the next episode, I lost my recap page, but I'll get it back.
Legend of
Harley
Harley.
Race.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Harley Race, like this is I think another one that I missed, but I know the stories of like, the time that he and Hogan I think had got into it, and Hogan with one of his famous lies talking about that like Harley Race, I guess, begged Hogan for a job, which he's full of shit. I will never get over Hogan lying and his Hoganisms. But like this is one I have to definitely go back and see. Hearing the stories about how like he, didn't want to turn down Starcade 83, and he managed Cactus Jack and Vader, and, he set up a wrestling school and that kind of thing. So, yeah, this is one I'm going to have to go back and watch.
Do you want to do it first, Tom, or do you want me to do it?
Yeah, either way.
You go ahead, guys.
Okay, this was a hard episode to watch because this guy had, came from the carnival circuits. I think he was one of the last ones to come from the carnival circuits.
Mm.
And he grew up like in the School of Hard Knocks. And he literally had to like wrestle grown men for money. And then he went into NWA and stuff like that. And as I said on the episode we were in at the time, I blame a lot of what happened because he started abusing his wife and stuff like that and started being a bit of a violent asshole. I blame it on that down headbutt because that down headbutt is something that gives you concussions. I don't care how protective you are of it. The guy himself even said wish he never popularized it.
Mm-hmm.
So that shows you what kind of damage you can do to because he really fucked him up. And he even said himself, he said he wished he'd never done it because he said that it turned him into a totally different person. And the thing is that he, as I said, that was kind of thing that it was a really like tough to watch because of what he became, because of the injuries and whatever. But saying that though, it was good to learn about one of the legends of the business and like what he had to go through, and it's just that the guy was a horrible human being just because of stuff that happened to him, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right, Sam.
Watching this, it kind of showed you a guy that found it very hard to like transition to what wrestling started to become under Vince McMahon, because he's a guy who wrestled in the 60s and 70s, and it was obviously different. You mentioned the carnival era and stuff like that. That all played its part, and even though there was a level of showmanship and stuff and all of that, it was very contained. And then when it came to his legacy, it was like he couldn't maintain it eventually because the eras were changing and they wanted more flashier wrestlers like your Hulk Hogan's to take over. And then like the very last kind of thing he had as a wrestler was the King of the Ring gimmick,
Yep.
and even that couldn't maintain him to a degree. Yeah, he was a hard guy. He was, tough as nails and all of that sort of stuff. And here he is in the Cyndi Lauper era. It just wasn't for him. As a manager, I thought he was pretty good, but he ended up then eating up his own words regarding the business. And you talk about Gary about not exposing the business. He was like that too until he got paid to expose the business.
Yep.
And so it's a bit weird how he is. Like here's a guy who is very much one particular way, but is happy to turn on a dime, for a dime. So yeah, it's somebody who I know is very much renowned, but I don't necessarily feel the same way about him like how other people do.
Yeah,
And that's
fair
what I
enough.
can really say on that. Yeah.
All right, now we're getting to the nitty and gritty part of it. Episode 6, Welcome to My Nightmare, the Chris Colt story. For those of us that were born around the 80s and 90s, we were completely unfamiliar with this dude. And if you want to talk about Dark Side of the Ring, these next 2 episodes were your Dark Side of the Ring. You got that here with this. Chris Colt, fucking crazy. That would be words that I would use to describe this guy. He did adult films and he just did all kind of weird type of things. And he was in the NWA, the Pacific Northwest Wrestling, won tag team titles, did this, did that. Passed away of AIDS or HIV May 23rd of 1995. There's always something about May 23rd that stands out, but this was arguably the darkest of the dark episodes. That's my thoughts on this one. Zam?
Yeah, May 23rd happens to be my birthday. And yeah, we're going to be talking about 2 Chris's in a moment. This particular Chris was a guy who just wanted to do things his own way. And he was a little bit of an innovator to a degree, like off the top turnbuckle stuff. He was one of the few people to do it. He was one of the first people to start coming in with his own ring entrance music and all of that. But he was one of these sort of like Amy Winehouses of wrestling, so to speak.
Yeah.
He just lost himself in his demons, unfortunately. And his demons was drugs, alcohol, and obviously being a gay man as well back then was very difficult for him. And he found it very hard to maybe express himself back then the way he did express himself. Don't get me wrong, I'll take that back.
Yep.
But losing his partner as well, obviously set him down, set him over the edge too. And nobody really talks bad about him as who he is. They do like him.
Yep.
Like he came across as somebody he had friends with and all of that, but there's somebody they couldn't save, unfortunately. And that's the tragic life of Chris Colt.
All right, Gaz?
I agree. It was just sad to see, and like, I think this was more tragic than it was dark, but I do think it's a good dark side episode. Like, there's a shame that he didn't exist in this era where people are okay being gay, people are okay being trans, people are okay being whatever, and people are accepting of it all. And the thing is, I do agree with what Xander said, that he was an innovator and that he did what he had to do to make a book. But I do agree that as soon as life turned on the dime for him, he just went down the dark path. And I thought, this is probably my second favorite episode. My favorite episode is coming up in the next one.
Yep.
This is my second favorite one because I thought it was nice to see, because the next guy I actually know about. This guy I didn't really know anything about, but he seemed to be a really good wrestler.
Okay, and with Dark Side of the Ring, this episode right here that we're about to talk about, this embodies Dark Side of the Ring. Gentleman Chris Adams. I'm going to let Gaz take it since he knows about Chris Adams, and then Sam and I will give our thoughts after.
Yeah, this one kind of like was just like the most difficult to watch, just because how much of a scumbag this one was. Like, how much this guy could just flip on a dime, like be like the nicest guy, jovial guy, be around people, and then all of a sudden I don't know whether I think people said it was drink, but sometimes drink would be involved where he could just become the nastiest piece of shit and beat the crap out of people, force guns on them, doing all sorts of the crappiest crap to people. Basically, people like human last trait. And if he wasn't for that part of the persona, he could have easily been in the WWE as like the first British champion. He could easily have been like topping the cars at WrestleMania. He could easily have been a top in the business, but because of his personality, because of the things he did as a horrible person, and to us, like hearing all these stories about him, it's just like I feel like it was just like too much. It's like a tidal wave of how shit this human being was.
Yeah, I thought that Chris Adams, if this was like your Dark Side of the Ring episode, this is what you got. Because it was like he was nice and mild mannered 1 minute, but once you got that alcohol in him, this dude was a fucking asshole. He would like beat people up and he would take liberties with people. And he was just not a nice guy. Yeah, he trained Steve Austin. Yeah, he did this, he did that. But this dude, he just could not contain himself. I thought that it was honestly a really dark and crazy episode. And oh man, this is definitely, I agree, the most difficult episode to watch of the entire season. Them?
Yeah, Chris Adams, um, he is a guy who, in my opinion, should have made it but didn't for various reasons. Obviously, the drugs and the alcohol plays its part, but he's a guy like who burnt his bridges. He had so many friends in the industry, and he was fighting and fucking them over all the bloody time. Like you couldn't trust him. Even his partners couldn't trust him. You knew he was an asshole when he wouldn't even spend New Year's Eve with his wife. You like spend it with her during the day so you could go put out partying at night with his friend, and then wouldn't come home for 3 days. This is who he is, and he burnt so many bridges that at one particular point when he was out on his ass, the one person that was able to take him on was a mark, a fan.
Yep.
And the fan looked after him, and he burnt that bridge as well by trying to kill the very guy who was sheltering him, so he wouldn't be fucking homeless. And that guy ended up having to kill him in order to fucking not get killed by Chris Adams, because Chris Adams was a rage monster. He would, like I said, he would like lose it on a dime, just like that, and start fighting people. And him being a trained martial artist as well as a wrestler and physically, in the shape that he is, he was a dangerous human being. And and I have no, I it's sad that certain people fall apart, but sometimes you're just an asshole.
Yeah.
And I think he was very much like that. I think he was not a good person, unfortunately, and you can see his relationships in that episode with the people who were supposed to be his friends. He lost them all. He lost all his relationships. He had nobody, and he died alone, so to speak, because nobody was his friend, all acquaintances or ex-friends.
Yeah,
He
he burned a bridge everywhere he went. And to think, if he would have went to the WWE, he would have been one of the greatest of all time. Like not necessarily like a Hogan or a Savage. I mean, like what he could do in there. He would have been one of the greatest workers of all time. I truly believe that. But okay, and then this is arguably the saddest episode, Sensational Sherry. Zam, I'm going to start with you. What'd you think about it?
Well, this is the definition of people who are heels tend to be really good people in real life.
Yep.
Not 100% though with Sherry, because she did give up her family in order to pursue a career in wrestling. She gave up her kids, she gave up her husband, but at the same time, she had no problem with this other woman stepping in to play the role of mum when she wasn't able to because she was too busy wanting to be a wrestler. Some of the stories you see of her, as a wrestler, she was very good in doing that, but she was better. But she always be renowned for playing the valet manager role. Obviously the drugs took its toll, like it does with everybody else, and it's just sad that she never really maintained a relationship with her son, who is who's fucked in his own right. I think he's suffering from cancer, or did suffer from cancer. It's a sad episode, and I don't know how I feel about it overall, but it's just sad, Like she achieved greatness, yet there's still nothing there at the same time. Like she got into the Hall of Fame, but it was over for her, and she should have had some sort of job within the industry after she was in the Hall of Fame. You know, as a commentator, something.
Mhm.
You know, still being a manager, something. You know, like they should have paid their dues for what she offered. You know, as one of the first top women within the WWE era.
Yeah, I'll just go
Yeah.
ahead and say, for me, this is easily the saddest episode of the entire series because I think that Sherry is one of the greatest valets of all time. She's one that we still to this day I don't think we talk about enough. You know, she literally gave up her family and her son for the wrestling business because that's how much she loved it. She loved it so much to the point where she even wrote a letter to her son saying, you know, I'm sorry that this had to happen, but this is my dream. And my advice to young wrestlers today is if you're going to get in the business, stay single. Don't have a family. If you're a young guy, you know, take care of yourself, take care of your body. And for Sensational Sherry, I just think it's very sad that drugs took her life and she died when she was visiting her mother. And that's no way that anyone should have to go out, in my opinion. Gaz?
Make it
Yep.
make it as a wrestler, like the way
Yep.
Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins has.
Yeah.
You know, Alexa Bliss has, and then maybe you could have a kid.
Yeah.
You know, or something like that. Yeah.
I 1,000% agree with both of you. It was really sad to see like the shape of Summer's in because he looked like he had probably had like cancer of the tongue and he had some of his tongue removed. So it was kind of hard to understand, but we had the captions on, and I thought, yeah, really good episode. A really sad episode, but really dark side. It was more good to see what Sherry had to go through to be in the business, like, and how she died young and stuff like that. It's just really sad because like she was one of my favorite valets and just her persona and everything.
Yeah. All right. And then the next episode, Enter Sandman, Legacy of a Hardcore Icon. This felt like more of a WWE presented episode to an extent rather than a dark side episode, but there are some dark side elements with Sandman and Raven shooting up drugs and Sandman, you know, smoking a cigarette, busting his head open before he got to the ring. That's what Sandman is most known for, is his awesome entrance. And Metallica, which I know Metallica is probably, we didn't like the fact that they used our music, but what can you do? For the Sandman, you know, he's going to be in the new WWE video game. So Sandman is a cautionary tale of what drugs can do to you while you're in the business, and it's best to keep your head clean and straight and sober. And that's basically my analysis of this episode. Gaz?
I agree. Like this was just like what the guy did to his body, and the thing is, what he did to his body forced him to do the drugs. It's one of those things where it just shows you the beneficiary of having good training because he wouldn't have need to do that hardcore crap if
Yep.
he knew how to work properly. I mean, and people who've been in the room with him said that the drug he was, the better he was, which is the opposite of what he should be. There's no somebody around the better he should be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just one of those things where he was just like very sloppy and stuff like that. But saying that though, his legacy is obvious. I mean, a lot of people now. I mean, how many wrestlers now come through the crowd? Like the Roman Reigns did, Flaming Sami Zayn did, Flaming Dean Ambrose. Sorry, what's his name? John Moxley.
The
Still
Shield and all
The
that.
Shield, Jey Uso.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So and they probably owe a debt of gratitude to the Sandman for that. But as the guy himself, he's messed up through drugs. He's just like one of those things that what you just said about drugs taking a toll. That's what happened.
Yep. Zam?
What do you get if you get Stone Cold Steve Austin and Jake the Snake Roberts? You get the Sandman, pretty much, because that's, you know, you can see the elements of both of them in this particular person. I actually thought this was a fun episode because he's able to live to talk about it. The only thing obviously that was a bit tragic that he started wailing on his wife, but he never came across as that sort of person because most of his career he never did that until he started going on the steroids. And steroids can obviously change you in a way, as we know from other people, that can make you do the most horrific things. He's obviously off the drugs now. He looks okay. He's still alive to tell the tale. You know, he talks about it with no remorse. It's just what he did back then.
Yep.
You know, and that a lot of wrestlers did. You know, the only scary thing was is that when he did some of Raven's drugs, You know,
He
he
died.
he
Yeah.
overdosed and stuff like that. But you know what he did, his entrances, his uh his feud with Raven and having his son involved and all of that. You know, there's some interesting moments. You know, from being the surfer gimmick, which is what made him the Sandman, to being the Sandman. You know, it was phenomenal. And then unfortunately, his character was too adult for WWE, especially Vince's WWE. He'd work now. You know,
Yeah.
if he was in his prime now, he'd be perfect. You know, um, so yeah, it was an interesting story regarding a character that we kind of expected to be the way he was portrayed in that episode. So yeah, I just found it okay.
Okay. And then to the finale, Black Saturday. I know that we did a review of it. You guys could go back and watch it. But I thought that this was a good way to end the finale. It basically expanded upon the death of the territories, how Vince McMahon is a cunning genius. He plays no games, doesn't take prisoners. He bought everybody out and started WrestleMania and pissed a lot of Southern fans off by buying the time slot and taking over and showing his wrestling and just upsetting people. And it created the Monday Night War. It helped create the Monday Night War, which to me was the greatest period in the history of wrestling. This was a great way to end Dark Side of the Ring. I'll start with them.
Yeah, this was a very good episode. I actually didn't like this episode the first time I watched it, but because I had to review it for our channel, I watched it a second time to take notes, and I absolutely loved this episode the second time round because I don't I don't like Vince McMahon at all. I despise the man, but you have to admire what he did to get into the position he did, to monopolize the industry, to ruin wrestling for all of us fans by destroying the territories. His plan for his own personal greed. You have to admire that. I don't like what he did. I don't like it at all. But from his perspective, it was a masterstroke. Obviously, he had a couple of lucky elements to get him to where he did. For instance, Jim Barnett being kind of his mentor and somebody who also had his fingers in many pies, which I'm sure Vince McMahon took advantage of to get him where he was. And Vince McMahon had the foresight to razzmatazz wrestling more than it already was. It was very much in its own bubble, its own shell, but he spread it out to get people like Cindy Lauper and Muhammad Ali and all these other actors and stuff like that involved in wrestling. He took it to the level where it kind of is now and is expanded upon. He knew all of this. He was ahead of his time at that time, and he got lucky and he did some smart, strategic chess moves that no wrestler who was running an industry could ever fathom. He was genius. I hate to say it. It hurts me to say it
Yep.
because of who he is now. But if you watch this episode and you see what he did, you have to tip your hat to him to because it was a master stroke.
Yeah,
It
you
really
gotta
was.
yeah, you gotta give him credit for that. I mean, we all hate Vince for what he is now, but none of us can sit here and deny we can't say Vince wasn't a revolutionary because he was. He was a genius. He was ahead of his time for a certain amount of time, but now Vince is a monster. They touch on that at the very end. It's sad that he will most likely never be acknowledged again, but for the 1980s and 90s, Vince was a genius. Gaz?
Yeah, I agree. He was a genius because he was playing 4D chess while everyone else was not playing that. And he basically destroyed all the. Now, I think Jim Barnett, if he hadn't just been so annoyed with what happened with him in Georgia Championship Wrestling, I don't think the takeover would have happened. Oh, it might not have happened as quickly if Jim Barnett hadn't done what he did, which was kind of instigate a lot of that stuff. So, like, because Jim Barnett was basically the catalyst. So I want to know. I mean, it also explains why Jerry Briscoe was on Vince's staff for so long. He's like, that's right, because he was like one of the ones who was behind the fall of the territories and stuff like that. So it's good to see that at least. And I agree with you. This was a really good documentary, and that's the reason I gave it a 10 there. But also, I thought it was a decent episode to explain what is a basically a vindictive and horrible businessman in Vince McMahon.
All right. If there is a season 6, give me some topics that you guys think you'd like to see. I'd like to see more people we've never heard of. I'd like to see more of like the people from like maybe the independent scene that we haven't heard of. I'd like to see more people from like the 60s and 70s we haven't heard of, because that's the type of stuff I like. I like learning about guys that I know nothing about, and that's what I want to see for the next season if it comes back. Zam?
Obviously, with the Black Saturday episode, they did touch upon Vince's last years in the industry, but that wasn't good enough. Like, you can't just talk about Black Saturday and then talk 5 minutes about how he ended up being kicked to the curb
Yeah.
after he sold his rights. We need to focus a whole more on Vince McMahon. We need to focus on Hulk Hogan. My God, this guy, he's got so much to him. I mean, Vince McMahon, Vince McMahon is like a 2, 3, 4-parter.
Oh, easy.
Because there are elements in other episodes of Dark Side of the Ring where they do talk about Vince McMahon, about regarding what he did with Snooker and what he did with Owen Hart and all of that sort of stuff. He has a role to play in so many things, right up to the end of his very career in the WWE. He has a role to play in so many things. And same with Hulk Hogan, stuff with Nick Hogan, for instance, and That Won't Work For Me, Brother, and how he never helped elevate other talent. Even when it came to putting Ultimate Warrior over, he kicked out pretty much just after 3 and gave him the belt and all of these sort of things. And so people were focusing on him as he was walking off, and stuff like that. Took away Warrior's moment, took away Savage's moment when he won the belt. All of these sort of things. It's all about him and the spotlight and the lies. There's so many lies, apparently, the Hogan lies.
Yeah.
Obviously, Alberto Del Rio, we need to talk about this guy. He needs to be spoken about. And I agree with you as well, Jose. We need to talk about people that I have no idea about, or I'm sure there are stories we can talk about. And not just about people, but also industries, certain wrestling promotions, certain events that happened.
Yeah.
That are like dark side worthy. All of these things, there's a whole bunch of stuff out there, I'm sure.
Yep. All right, guys, what would you like to see?
I like to see. What would I like to see? I'd like to see Shawn Michaels on drugs.
That'd be a good episode.
I'd love to see Bull Sawyer, just because of his reputation. I'd love to see. What else would I love to see? I'd love to see maybe the end of Bret Hart, but that could be a bit boring. I'm trying to think what else. I'd love to see. I actually had something in my mind. Razor Ramon, I think you've mentioned a couple of times, would be interesting. The
Razor Ramon would be a good one, yeah.
Yeah, Razor would be a good one.
It's got a whole,
that might be interesting. I'd love to see maybe X-Pac, maybe that would be the Click. Who else would I love to see? I'd love to see. What else would it do? It would be really interesting. That'd be really
Virgil?
JBL.
JBL?
Yeah, because JBL's been known as a bully backstage. It'd be interesting to see what kind of dirt they got on him.
Yeah, also Bob Holly as well, because he's got a reputation as well. Maybe Ken Anderson, but that would be
Bill DeMont, maybe. I don't know.
Oh yeah, Bill DeMont
would be a good one. Yeah, I'd watch that one.
And he's a bit of an arsehole too. Some of these guys have got chips on their shoulders, and I think it's because like people like Holly and DeMont have got a chip on their shoulder because they never made it to the top. Yep. So they're like, I'm going to take it out on the new guys, you know what I mean, and beat the shit out of them. And so
Perk Angle could be interesting.
Oh, dude, Kurt Angle, Percocet, Kurt Angle. Oh yeah, easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
Maybe even Triple H has got something there regarding how he got to the top.
Yep.
And buried his way.
I mean, Gary said the Click, so they could spread that shit out because they could do like episode on Shawn, episode on the Kid, episode on Nash, episode on Hall. You've got like 5 episodes right there waiting to happen, like 4 or 5 episodes.
Well, you mentioned they did Dynamite Kid. They could do one on Davey Boy Smith.
Oh yeah, they could.
He wasn't clean living whatsoever, and even like maybe on like why wrestlers die so young. Like so many, like we could go, like, it could make a 3-parter on that.
Yeah, they could do like an expose on like drugs and wrestling and really go in depth with it. Like, show like maybe do something different instead of like the silhouette format. Like you actually go to a wrestling ring and you have like, a couple local guys and it's like, this is the effect that it does on your body, and then they take a slam, that kind of shit.
About Ric Flair.
Flair easily. He's in the news right now for making an ass of himself. No surprise.
Yeah. No surprise. Like the guy can't, he can't be like someone like Mick Foley, can he? Like, you're a legend, Rick. You don't need to make an ass of yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But he's a charismatic character, so that's why he does so.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think what else could be an interesting one. I'd say maybe Paul Heyman, but that maybe.
I think we've had ECW and stuff
all right.
that.
Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, they could do a Brock Lesnar episode. Gable Steveson would be one because he was an Olympian guy that got signed by WWE. They didn't do anything with him, but I don't know if that would really be an episode.
Yeah, the guy who just basically made a tit of himself.
Yep.
I'm trying to think what else.
I know they're going to do like a Who Killed WCW, and I have no interest in that whatsoever.
If you really want to see Who Killed WCW, read the book that was written by, I can't remember who wrote it, but
I think Guy Evans. Yeah, I think Guy Evans wrote that
book. That's the definitive good book to read.
How about, is it Perry Saturn?
Perry Saturn would be a good one if they haven't done him already.
I mean, you could do maybe like a Vince Russo like TNA run, like the Bishop era, where like they basically took a company that was doing okay for itself and basically tanked it.
Yeah. I'd like to see Victory Road 11 Sting Jeff Hardy as a Dark Side episode.
Right,
that'd be kind of cool.
I think Jeff Hardy himself needs to have a Dark Side episode. Maybe Matt Hardy too.
Oh, I just thought of one. Matt Hardy and Edge. That's a Dark Side of the Ring fucking episode.
Yeah, because WWE's covered it, but I'd like to see like what Matt Hardy would really have to say about it.
I mean,
considering that Matt Hardy's now
with AEW. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody got anything else they want to add before we wrap this up?
No, just I'm already hoping. I'm looking. Vice is no. I think they went bankrupt, didn't they?
Yes.
I don't know.
I heard they did.
So regarding Dark Side of the Ring, I don't know if we'll get any more in the future. I don't know. Will somebody else take over?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Because the stories we just rattled off there are easily Dark Side worthy.
Oh yeah, you got at least another 2 seasons.
It's just the production value that concerns me. There's a look about Dark Side that I like, with the out of focus shots and all of that. It makes you feel that you're really in there. The music, the tone, and the people that get involved to talk about it, like Jim Cornette. Even if somebody else has to take over the reins because Vice is no longer doing shit anymore, please just copy the formula.
Yeah,
with Dark Side what makes it so endearing in the first place.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I am DOZ. I'd like to thank Zam and Gaz for joining me. Please subscribe to NerdTube. Anybody got anything they want to plug?
And just more videos on the channel always coming out on a regular basis. So check us out for more reviews, reactions, and God knows what else.
Yep.
Just topics and discussions.
We are NerdTube. We are the greatest YouTube channel that you kind of maybe sort of heard of. We'd like to thank you all for watching and say like, share, and subscribe. Bye-bye.
Peace.